If the Boston Bruins aren't prepared to recall a red-hot Fabian Lysell, they need to package him in a trade right now because his value may never be higher.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I have been covering this team and the NHL for various major outlets for nearly 20 years. Today is Thursday, December 11th, and on the show, we are going to discuss the Bruins Barometer. That's a weekly look at whether we are buying, selling, or holding based on current results. And today I'm in buy mode, which also includes selling on Fabian Lysell as part of a package for a bigger prize. We will also take a look at the ESPN trade board that was dropped this morning, a couple Bruins appearing on that list. And then, of course, we will preview tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. Thank you again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. And I am so excited to talk about our favorite hockey team every single day. This team is very fun to watch these days, including the AHL product, a part of which is the recent run of Fabian Lysell. This guy's got 6 goals in his last 7 games, as well as 9 points over that span. He scored again last night in a game against Hershey, and he is proving to be the speedy, skilled, high-end offensive talent that the Bruins drafted in the first round a few years ago. The problem is the Bruins are healthy at the moment up front. They've already got Mikey Eyssimont bumped out of the lineup. Jeffrey Viel is still on the roster. David Pastrnak is back, as is Victor Arvidsson on the right side, with Mark Kastelik playing a key role on the third line. So where does Lysell fit in right now if he were indeed to be recalled? He's averaging over a point per game now, 11 goals, 10 assists for 21 points in 20 games. But unless he's going to be riding in the top 6, his skills are likely going to be wasted. And there's still some, questions about his defensive responsibility or lack thereof, and whether he is a fit in Marco Sturm's demanding, accountable system. So when we look at the Bruins Barometer, it's a look at where the Bruins are in the standings at the moment and kind of looking at the season-long storyline of whether they are going to be buyers or sellers come the trade deadline. And I think you look at this team right now, they're 18-13. They've got a winnable game coming up tonight against the Jets, who are without MVP, Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuck, and tough game against the Wild coming up on Sunday, but then a 5-game homestand leading into the holiday break. It's a real opportunity for the Bruins to pick up some points and establish themselves as a playoff contender in the Eastern Conference. There was this post going around on NHL socials with a quote from EJ Radick, who said that winning is just part of the Bruins culture and they will not stand for anything less than. Now, that doesn't mean they're Stanley Cup contenders. That doesn't mean they're one of the elite teams in the conference, let alone their own division. But there is an opportunity for them to be competitive this season, and we're seeing that in the early results. Through 31 games, they're 18-13, 1 point out of first in the Atlantic Division behind the Detroit Red Wings. They're tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning. In terms of point percentage in the division, the Bruins are up in third, behind only Detroit and Tampa. Now, this is taking into consideration the fact that the Florida Panthers are off to a slow start without two of their star players. The Leafs are well down. The Senators are struggling, but the Bruins can add here. And if you don't see Fabian Lysell as part of your long-term plan, if he's just not going to fit into the mold that you're trying to create and demand out of your NHL level players, then it behooves the Bruins to try to package him and improve elsewhere. Like, there's long-term question to be answered on the right side behind David Pastrnak. Victor Arvidsson has played well for the Bruins this season, but he is, over 30, an impending unrestricted free agent, and he may be a guy who they could flip at the trade deadline and not really lose out net worth because, maybe they, again, package Lysell for an improvement on the wing, like a top-tier second-line right winger who can score consistently and who will be around for a while. And then you can flip Arvidsson to get some picks. So it's kind of a win-win that way. You look at a guy like Connor Garland, who's believed to be available in Vancouver. He might be a fit on that second line. You take Lysell, you send him back to where he played junior hockey, and the Canucks can see whether or not he's a fit at the NHL level. It doesn't make any sense to just continue to allow him to, I don't want to say toil in the AHL, but look, we know who he is. He's fast, he's skilled, he can put pucks on and in the net. He's not going to be a Selke trophy candidate. He may coast a bit while he's out there. But look, when David Pastrnak came up, when he was a rookie, he wasn't necessarily known as a strong two-way player either. That's something that he came to develop. Yes, playing alongside Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand, two of the very best at that style of play. But now he's become an all-around world-class player. I'm not saying Lysell can reach that pinnacle, and if the Bruins even think that's possible, you hold on to him. But if he's not in their long-term plans, and you look at the fact that they signed this past summer Alex Steeves, Matej Blumel, Fraser Minton being acquired, Marat Husnudinov, like these are all guys who have overtaken Lysell, Matt Poitras, Georgi Merkulov on the depth chart. They're a bit more advanced in their careers. They're a bit more NHL ready. But it's like, look at Poitras. He's probably projected to be a third-line center long-term, maybe second-line ceiling. But you already have Fraser Minton as your third-line center for the foreseeable future, provided you keep Pavel Zacha and Casey Middlestat. But either way, do you really see Minton and or Poitras as your second-line center as early as next season? No. So maybe the play here is to package Lysell and something for an upgrade up front. Look, you don't want to, that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's not as if the Bruins are broke and need fixing, but they're clearly not an optimized Stanley Cup. Specifically at, that spot where Victor Arvidsson is. A long-term fix needs to be found there. Maybe you look for some more depth scoring. The line of Jeannot, Kostelic with Minton, maybe that's more of a fourth line on a contending team. So for me, it's either you call Lysell up, and I still fully believe that he can be an NHL player. Maybe not like a Morgan Geekie type breakout, or definitely not like a David Pastrnak type talent, but still a guy who can score and regularly in pro hockey at the highest level. If the Bruins don't see him that way, or they don't think his game will translate under Marco Sturm, then you have to trade him and get something that can help your team at the NHL level long term. What that would look like beyond the obvious candidate in Connor Garland remains to be seen. There's a lot of guys who seemingly could be available. ESPN dropped their trade board this morning. There's a couple Bruins on it and a couple intriguing options the Bruins may look at, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move very fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into each moment. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. At FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And you're already living your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Boston Bruins with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonbruins.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, so ESPN has a new trade board that dropped just this morning, and there are a couple Bruins on there that we need to discuss. Now, the big fish, Quinn Hughes, arguably the best defenseman or top 3 defenseman in the NHL. He's reportedly available as the Canucks just sink and look to retool, rebuild. I don't know. Elias Pettersson's on that list as well. And when it comes to Bruins, they have a guy under the elite players with term tier. And that includes Pavel Zacha. He's got $4.7 million AAV, 2 years left on his deal. So this and next, prominently mentioned as another trade possibility for GM Don Sweeney during the offseason. But is that still the case with the Bruins thriving under new head coach Marco Sturm? Zacha has 22 points in 30 games. And this is a perfect example of if you're going to trade Zacha, you package him with Lysell to bring in a top tier second line center. You don't know if Casey Middlestat is a long-term answer. You don't know who you're going to have as your second line center moving forward, or even a top line center, because Elias Lindholm's not getting any younger. Maybe you want to put somebody else up there. James Higgins has that kind of potential, obviously, to be a top 2 center at the very least. So maybe you got Higgins, Lindholm. You want to add that scoring right winger or a scoring left winger. Like, you need more top 6 legit forwards on this team. And if Pavel Zacha and the Boston Bruins don't seem to be on track to reach a contract extension agreement, then package Zacha and Lysell, or package Zacha and Patra to bring in a younger, higher ceiling second line forward. There are guys 25 and under who are available. They call this the tier of discontent. There's Igor Chinakhov, who requested a trade during the offseason. hasn't done much to inspire potential suitors. I had him on my salary cap keeper league, but I've dropped him 4 points in 24 games, 10 minutes of ice time on average, 2.1 million against the salary cap, restricted free agent next summer. Maybe that's a guy that you see as more established and reliable than a Lysell, and you make a move, bring him in. There's Brad Lambert over in Winnipeg, disgruntled with his progress within the Jets organization, played just 10 games in the NHL after being selected 30th overall in 2022, signed through next season on a deal that carries a cap hit of $1.136 million. Another guy, you look at disgruntled first round draft pick who hasn't been given a huge shot at the NHL level. Maybe you flip Lysell for a Lambert and see if that change of scenery can improve things. Lambert has pedigree and could be a very good player in the NHL. There's also Pavel Zacha, 22 years old, expressed a desire to be moved by the Ducks if they're not going to play him, but they could move him just to loosen up their logjam on defense, they write ESPN, both at the NHL level and what's coming through their prospect pipeline. They've got Jackson Lacombe, Owen Zellweger, and on and on. Anaheim's going to deal from a position of strength there, one NHL executive said. Right-hand shot. We talked yesterday about who comes out when McAvoy's in. Maybe you can flip Henry Jokiharju or Andrew Peeke to the Ducks, along with a prospect, and bring Mintyukov back, who has great upside on defense. They also mention Nick Robertson, Toronto, Bowen Byram, who signed a 2-year deal with the Sabres, $6.25 million. Speculation that he could be traded. He was drafted, third overall a few years ago now, anyways. They also mentioned Michael DiPietro in the goalie tier. Obviously, DiPietro is a guy who's excelling at the AHL level. 812, 500 AAV, buried on the team's depth charts behind Jeremy Swayman, Joonas Korpisalo, but he could be a guy who there's a lot of interest in. We know that Edmonton, Toronto were scouting the Providence Bruins the other night. Maybe they were looking at Lysell, Poitras. Maybe they were looking at DiPietro because they have goaltending issues. The only other players who could make sense on this list, maybe you look at a guy like Eli Tolvanen if you think he could be a upgrade on the wings. Lucas Reichel in Vancouver. He was a highly touted prospect who was flipped to the Canucks earlier this season. We know the Bruins are likely interested in Kiefer Sherwood. The whole point of adding at this point for the Bruins would be to make this team better long-term. And while they've been able to piece a pretty competitive team, or a more competitive team than expected so far this season, you don't have the makings of, a team that's going to contend. And there's still some pieces that they need to fill. You have your high-end goalie in Jeremy Swayman. You have defensemen in Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, who are all around long-term. You have Jokiharju with 2 seasons remaining on his contract past this one, which is unfortunate. You think you have something in Mason Lohrei. Up front, you have commitments to David Pastrnak, Elias Lindholm, Morgan Geekie, Tanner Jeannot, another 4 seasons after this one. Mark Kastelik, another 2. But guys like Casey Middlestat, Pavel Zacha, who can be unrestricted free agents next summer, in 2027. Yeah. Victor Arvidsson, who's an unrestricted free agent this summer. Are those guys part of the long-term plan, or do you package them, try to make more like a hockey trade where you're not just selling for picks or prospects, but you're bringing in guys like Fraser Minton, Marat Husnudinov, or ideally higher end players who can fill those roles long term on the second line. Middlestat's only 27, so he could be a long term fit. Zacha's only 28. These guys aren't long in the tooth per se. Arvidsson, probably not a long term solution. Sean Corrali's 32. Maybe he's not the best fit long term either. But on the blue line, you're pretty well set for a few years now. The plan here would be to determine whether or not Middlestat and Zacha are long-term fits. And then if they are, you find that scoring right winger who can elevate this team to the next level and give them a legit top six. Arvidsson's playing really well right now. You could bump him down to the third line to go Minton, Arvidsson, and Jeannot. I don't know, Kostelek, Jeannot are top tier, like third liners long term, although that line is rolling at the moment. The whole point is you need to add more high end talent. And if it means sacrificing some of these younger prospects who you don't see being long term fits, then you pull the trigger. And that's where we're at right now with the Boston Bruins. Tonight, they take on the Winnipeg Jets. This is a very winnable game, and we'll preview it here as the podcast continues. The holidays are such an amazing time of year, but they can also get overwhelming fast. Travel, gifts, parties, year-end expenses. It's really easy to lose track of your money this time of year. And that's exactly why Monarch has become such a game changer. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, simple dashboard. The holiday spending category can become a lifesaver. You can see exactly what's left in your gift and travel budget in real time. And it's great for couples. Shared dashboards, shared goals, and fewer, wait, how much did we spend? Conversations. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, Bruins Jets tonight in Winnipeg. This is a game that the Bruins can win just by virtue of Connor Hellebuyck being injured. Right now, the Jets are relying on Eric Comrie primarily as their starting goaltender. They're 2-7-1 in their past 10 games, having beaten only Buffalo and Nashville, two of the lower tier teams in the NHL this season. They're coming off losses to the Oilers and the Stars. And it's an opportunity for the Bruins to take advantage of a Jets team that was so good last season, but without Connor Hellebuyck, they're very vulnerable. They are led in scoring by some elite players in Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, 38 and 37 points respectively. Josh Morrissey with 25 points on the back end. But that goaltending piece is really missing. Eric Comrie being relied on heavily. He's got an .892 save percentage with a record of 6-7-1 for the Jets this season. Connor has 8 points, including 3 goals and 5 assists over their past 5 games. The Bruins are led by Morgan Geekie, who's got 8 points, 4 goals, 4 assists. Elias Lindholm with 7 assists over the past 5 games for the Bruins. Jeremy Swayman did get the game the other night against St. Louis. The Bruins are 6-4 in their past 10. They've won 4 of their past 5, 6 of their past 7. 5 of their past 7, beating St. Louis twice, New Jersey, and we could very well see Korpisalo in net tonight to save Swayman for the game against the Wild, which will be much more competitive. His save percentage, Korpisalo's, is at .888 right now, so slightly worse than our boy Eric Comrie. It's the first of two meetings between these two teams. They won't play again until March 19th. When it comes to special teams battle, the Bruins, 6th on the power play, 10th on the penalty kill. The Jets' power play is 12th in the NHL, and their penalty kill is 19th. So the Bruins definitely have the advantage when it comes to special teams. Stay out of the box. I say this every game. They just need to do it. Face-offs, these teams are dead even at 51.6% success rate. So that'll change tonight. The Bruins are a better offensive team than the Jets, despite their star players stepping up. The Bruins are averaging 3.19 goals per game, which is actually 8th in the NHL, which is so much higher than any of us expected them to be. Scoring has not been a problem for this team, and they've got a pretty nice, even distribution of point scorers. Morgan Geekie, David Pastrnak leading the way with 32 points apiece. Pavel Zacha, I mentioned, with 22 points. Then you have Elias Lindholm with 18. Victor Arvidsson, 13. Casey Middlestat, Mikey Eyssimont, Tanner Jeannot with 12. Mark Kastelic, Fraser Minton with 11. Interesting that Eyssimont was the odd man out the other night, despite the fact that he has outproduced Marat Husnudinov. Husnudinov with only 8 points, Eyssimont with 12. Alex Steeves with 8 points in 15 games. Sean Corrali with a couple assists the other night with 8 points in 31 games. Husnudinov with 8 points. So, pretty much all the regular forwards almost have double digits in points. And on the blue line, McAvoy, who did take the stretch yesterday after a full skate, which is usually an indication that he'll be back in the lineup. So look out for that tonight, and we'll see who indeed comes out of the lineup upon his return. He had 14 points in 19 games before his injury. Mason Lohrei with 12. Lindholm, Hampus, and Nikita Zadorov, each with 10 points apiece as well. So all it says to me is that tonight's game is winnable. The Jets are struggling without Connor Hellebuck, which is completely understandable. At the moment, they are on the outside looking in of the playoff picture. And in the Central Division, they are currently 6th in terms of total points and 5th in terms of point percentage, 29 points in 29 games, 14-14-1. But the big thing to look at is the fact that they are 2-7-1 in their past 10 and have lost 2 games in a row. The Bruins are 6-4 in their past 10 and have won 3 straight games. And tonight's is a winnable one. The Jets also with a -1 goal differential, and our Bruins are at +5. 8 p.m. Eastern start from the chilly capital of Manitoba, which I called home for a couple years, actually. This is before the Jets came back. Always love the Jets' look and their fan base. Should be a good one tonight. And we'll see how it goes. Tomorrow's episode, we will recap whatever happens tonight. Take a look ahead at Sunday's game against the Minnesota Wild. Thank you for tuning in today to Locked On Boston Bruins. Make sure you subscribe and follow so you get all the latest episodes and bonus content. You can find the show on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And if Locked On Boston Bruins made your Spotify Wrapped, prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure your second listen is the NHL Game Night podcast available on the Locked On NHL podcast channel. Again, you can find the Locked On Bruins Everydayer Club links on lockedonbruins.supercast.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm Ian McLaren. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other, And we'll talk to you again next time on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network.